we're dealing with deeply insane people. They're psychopaths, so they act like psychopaths. You can follow it out of Babylon, you can follow it out of Egypt into Rome. We had the British Empire, and we had these other European empires as well. What that period of colonialism was this cult going global. Wherever this network has gone, an empire has followed. This cult has intergenerational families which continue on through the generations.
So I'm Rob Moore, host of the Disruptive Entrepreneur Show. David Icke is probably one of the world's most renowned conspiracy theorists. He went down some very controversial rabbit holes. Who runs the world? David also talks about Bill Gates, the billionaires, the big social media platforms. So some major revelations coming in this interview. But first, make sure you like this video, turn the notification bell on and subscribe to the channel. Who is this cult that controls this money system? Why do they want this control using this money system?
Well, let me answer the first one first of all. Why does a psychopath do what they do? Why does a serial killer do what they do? Why do psychopaths act like they do? And the answer is because they're psychopaths. So what we're dealing here with are psychopaths, in fact, super psychopaths. Super psychopaths that have, as psychopaths have, it's what it is the top trait of a psychopath. They have no empathy. They have no ability to put themselves in the feeling and experiences of those they affect. So anyone who has empathy, it's the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior. If you can feel empathy with the effect you're having on other people, that limits what you're going to do. Because first of all, you're having an emotional consequence for what you're doing. But when you have no empathy, because you're a psychopath, you don't have that emotional consequence. In fact, you get off on people suffering and you posturing your power over them. So, we're dealing with deeply insane people from a consciousness point of view, but intellectually bright enough to understand how the human psyche works and how you can manipulate it. Because when there's a few of you and you want to control billions, you have to do it by manipulating the perceptions of the billions so they act and respond in ways that suit your agenda. You can't, they want to go to this next stage through connecting the human brain to artificial intelligence, which they're openly talking about. But up to this point, they simply don't have the numbers to impose their will upon the population, because not enough of them, even taking into account the law enforcement and the government administration and all this stuff, there's still only a fraction of them compared with the population they want to control and dictate to. So the way they do it, and the COVID era is a classic example of it, is they manipulate the perceptions of the people so they act in ways that suit the agenda. So they're psychopaths, so they act like psychopaths. And in terms of who they are, well, that's a very long story. But I have taken this back to at least to ancient Babylon and Sumer, and you can go back further and into other parts of the world as well. But you can follow a network which you can follow it out of Babylon, you can follow it out of Egypt too, and into Rome, where they became the Roman Empire ultimately. Wherever this network has gone through history, an empire has followed, because that's what they are. They're acquisitive. They wanted global power, and they went in stages expanding that global power. So this cult has intergenerational families which continue on through the generations. So one era people die, but the next generation comes in to take over, and it's a long plan to get where they pretty much are now, which is global centralization of power. So we had the Roman Empire, of course, and then this center of this cult moved up into Northern Europe, and massively centered in London. And what we call the City of London is the financial district, which has its own police force, its own government, etc., is a massive global center to this day of this cult, which, of course, as we've discussed already, uses control of finance and money to dictate the choice, thus the freedom or lack of it, of the population. And when they settled their center in Britain, what do we have then? We had the British Empire, and we had these other European empires as well. And what that period of colonialism was this cult going global. And they went off, and what did they say about the British Empire? The sun never set on it. It was so vast, but you had all the other European empires as well: the French, the Belgian, the German, etc., the Dutch, and you're pretty much spanning the world in terms of colonialism. And then we had this massive sleight of hand when it appeared that the colonial powers were rolling back and giving freedom to their former colonies. But that's not what happened. They exchanged overt, in-your-face dictatorship, which overwhelmingly has a finite life. It may take a long time, but it has a finite life because the people under control can see their controllers. The exchange that took place with the apparent colonial rollback went from overt control to covert control. And they left out in these former colonies this secret society network and the families that run it in each country, because this global cult is like it's like a holographic web. One of the great traits of holograms is that every part of the hologram is a smaller part of the whole. And this is how this cult works. It's holographic. You have a global network, and then you have subsidiary networks in each country. And those subsidiary networks have the role of imposing in their sphere of influence the agenda dictated from the center. And that's how you get this situation, as we've seen with the COVID era, of pretty much the same response, identical in so many cases, response to the same situation. And so in each country, these subsidiary networks have the role of controlling that country's government, any political party that has a chance of forming a government, and a lot of the rest as well. Controlling finance, crucial, the banking system, the financial system in that country, which is why the City of London is so important in terms of Britain. Controlling the major corporations, controlling the health pyramid. And so the various subsidiaries in these different countries are running the banking system in those countries in accordance with the centrally dictated agenda. And so you have organizations like the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, which was created by these families, the Rockefellers, etc., where the heads of the various central banks meet regularly to coordinate policy. And it's all centrally dictated, but you've got these subsidiaries playing it out in each country. And so then you had the further expansion of this cult's power through what is called globalization. Globalization is what? The centralization of power in every area of our lives. Globalization, we gave it a name eventually, is simply the ongoing centralization of power in the banking system and these other areas of human life that this cult is generating, because it's a simple equation. If the few want more and more control over the many, they have to centralize decision making. If you look at the history of this period I'm talking about, first of all, people were in a tribal situation where the people in the tribe were making the decisions for the tribe. Then lots of the tribes were brought together under what we call nations. Now, a few people at the center of the nation are dictating to all that group of tribes that form the nation. And then in the European Union, of course, there's this bringing together of countries under centralized control. Now, all the former tribes of all the former nations are now dictated from Brussels by people who are simply unelected. And although Britain is supposed to have left the European Union, it's still welded to so much of its dictating of the way things operate. And so the next stage, which is where it's been heading all along, I've been writing about this for 30 years, is to create a world government, a world central bank, which will dictate all global finance, a world currency. I've been writing about this, mate, since 1992, 93. That the idea was to create a single global currency and bring an end to cash. And this COVID era, of course, has seen cash plummet even quicker than it was before. And why? Because the cult frontman appointed by Bill Gates, Tedros, Director General of the World Health Organization, created by the Rockefellers in 1948, said very early on in the COVID era that you could catch this, quote, virus off money, so better to use cards, etc. And so money plummeted. I mean, I started getting cups of coffee on railway stations from little cabins on the station where you always paid with money, and now they only take card. So you are looking at this constant centralization of power. And at every stage, fewer people are dictating to more and more. And there's another equation in this, which is that the more you centralize power, the more power you have at the center to centralize even quicker. So it gets faster and faster and faster and faster. And so if you look at the COVID era, basically it's been a period, the last 2 years, 18 months since the first lockdown, a period in which what has been happening in the background, in the shadows, in the peripheral vision, this manipulation, has gone on public display.
So let me know in the comments, what did you like? What didn't you like? What do you agree with? What do you not agree with? I would love your thoughts in the comments right now. We have a full, deep interview, the uncut, unedited version. So if you want to watch that, the link is below. So make sure you like the video, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe to the Disruptive Entrepreneur channel. And remember this, if you don't risk anything, you risk everything.